Welcome back to The Lost Tactician, where history's hardest lessons forge tomorrow's survival strategies. Today we're entering the smoky forge of the medieval blacksmith, where hammer strikes rang out like battlefield drums and secrets were embedded into iron itself. Imagine excavating a centuries-old battlefield and unearthing a farming sickle, a soldier's knife or a mason's chisel that emerges from the earth as if it were forged yesterday, its edge still sharp, its surface untouched by the gnawing teeth of rust. This isn't fantasy. These tools exist, and the question that haunts modern metallurgists is simple yet profound. How did medieval smiths, working without electron microscopes or chemical laboratories, create implements that outlasted empires? We're about to uncover the forgotten science of ancient rust-proofing, a testament to human ingenuity that challenges everything we thought we knew about the primitive past. The unseen legacy of ancient rust-proofing, it's really quite something. The discovery of perfectly preserved medieval tools has forced archaeologists and material scientists to reconsider the technological sophistication of our ancestors. When researchers analyze these artifacts, expecting to find brittle, corroded remnants of a crude age, they instead encounter metal that defies the natural order of decay. The most famous example stands 17 feet tall in Delhi, India, an iron pillar erected around 400 CE that has weathered 16 centuries of monsoons without succumbing to significant rust. Similar discoveries dot archaeological sites across Europe and Asia, from Viking-Age tools in Scandinavia to farming implements buried in English soil since the Norman conquest. These aren't anomalies or accidents of preservation. They represent a deliberate mastery of metallurgical principles that modern industry, in its rush toward efficiency and purity, has largely abandoned and forgotten. Unveiling the so-called lost alloys, the secret begins at the molecular level, in the very chemistry of the iron itself. Modern steel production treats impurities as enemies to be eliminated, but medieval smiths worked with what we now call swamp ore or bog iron, material rich in elements that contemporary refineries would filter away. Chemical analysis reveals that ancient rust-resistant tools often contain elevated levels of phosphorus, sometimes reaching concentrations that would be considered contamination by today's standards. Yet, this phosphorus proves to be the guardian element, forming a thin, stable hydrate layer on the metal's surface that acts as an invisible shield against moisture and oxygen. The iron pillar of Delhi contains approximately 1% phosphorus, enough to generate a protective film called mesawheat that continually regenerates itself. But phosphorus tells only part of the story. Medieval iron also retained microscopic fibers of slag, the glassy byproduct of smelting that modern processes remove completely. Rather than weakening the metal, these slag inclusions create an internal architecture of barriers, a maze that prevents moisture from penetrating deep into the grain boundaries where destructive oxidation begins. Under microscopic examination, these ancient metals reveal a landscape unlike smooth, homogeneous modern steel. They show layered structures, crystalline formations, and embedded materials that transform the iron from a uniform substance into a composite material, engineered not through deliberate chemistry, but through intuitive understanding refined across generations of master smiths. The alchemy of rust resistance wasn't achieved through composition alone. It was hammered into existence, stroke by muscular stroke at the anvil. Medieval forging was an act of transformation through violent repetition. Each hammer blow compressed the outer layers of the tool, creating what metallurgists now recognize as work hardening, a process that densifies the metal surface into a protective crust more resistant to environmental assault than the softer core beneath. The smith didn't merely shape the iron. He fundamentally altered its grain structure, refining it through cycles of heating, hammering, and controlled cooling that, honestly, modern quick production methods just cannot replicate. The technique of forge welding, where pieces of iron were joined at temperatures below their melting point through diffusion bonding, maintained structural integrity in ways that, modern fusion welding often compromises. This process, combined with the repeated folding seen in pattern-welded blades, created not just decorative beauty, but functional superiority. Each fold introduced new layers, each layer another barrier against corrosion's advance. The smith's intuition guided temperature and timing, reading the color of heated metal in the forge's glow, knowing precisely when to strike and when to quench. Beyond the battlefield everyday durability. While we romanticize medieval weapons, the true genius of rust-resistant metallurgy manifested in the tools of daily survival. Agricultural implements that could withstand seasons of earth and rain without deteriorating meant the difference between prosperity and famine. Imagine a plowshare that lasted decades rather than years represented generational wealth, an inheritance as valuable as land itself. Construction tools that didn't require constant replacement allowed medieval communities to build the cathedrals and fortifications that still stand today. This wasn't merely about longevity, it was economic revolution. In an age where iron was expensive and smiths were skilled specialists, tools that endured transformed the material culture of entire societies. The preservation techniques extended the metal's life even further. Smiths employed controlled oxidation processes, deliberately creating protective oxide layers through techniques we now call bluing and blackening. Heating the finished tool and quenching it in oils, often mutton fat or linseed oil, formed a layer of black magnetite that sealed the surface against destructive red rust. Some smiths practiced russeting, allowing a controlled, light surface oxidation that was then greased and sealed, creating yet another barrier. Natural coatings of beeswax, pine tar, and lanolin from raw wool were applied regularly, excluding the air and moisture that enable corrosion. These weren't just maintenance routines, they were ritualized knowledge, passed from master to apprentice, encoded in the muscle memory of craftsmen whose names history has forgotten. Modern lessons from ancient masters. As we pursue sustainable manufacturing and wonder about our future relationship with resources, these medieval methods offer unexpected wisdom. Contemporary material science is rediscovering that purity isn't always superior, that certain impurities provide properties worth preserving. Research into phosphorus-enriched steel for marine applications and infrastructure directly traces its inspiration to analysis of ancient artifacts. The concept of passive oxide layers, now central to corrosion engineering, was practiced centuries before the periodic table existed. The medieval blacksmith's forge wasn't just a workplace, it was a laboratory where empirical knowledge accumulated across lifetimes. These craftsmen couldn't explain oxidation chemistry or crystalline structures, but they understood metal in ways we're only beginning to reappreciate. Their legacy, buried in soil and preserved in museums, reminds us that innovation doesn't always move forward in straight lines. Sometimes the path to the future requires looking backward, learning from those who survived by making tools that endured. If this journey into forgotten metallurgy has sparked your curiosity about how historical knowledge forges modern survival skills, hit that like button and share this video. Subscribe to The Lost Tactician for more deep dives into the tactical genius and enduring lessons hidden in history's forge. Until next time, remember, the best tools for tomorrow might be the ones we've already forgotten.